The first time the Tharxan delegation visited Earth, they were horrified within 20 minutes. Their ship, a lean obsidian cylinder humming with ionized flecks of light, descended over Geneva with all the grace and tension of a diplomatic ballet. The United Nations had rolled out the red carpet literally on the tarmac of a secured airstrip. Cameras rolled, dignitaries fidgeted, flags flapped. Roger Flint hated every second of it. He stood off to the side of the welcoming committee, clutching a clipboard and wearing a visitor's pass that read Civilian Consultant Nutritional Anthropology. His badge looked more official than it was. The only reason he was even on site was because someone in the Department of Interplanetary Relations had read his decade-old thesis. Caffeine, humanity's most reliable crutch. The sleek landing ramp extended. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal. A single Tharxan emerged, its elongated body wrapped in a shimmering suit that shifted color with every step. Eyes like marbles of liquid copper scanned the humans in silence. Then the Tharxan did something unexpected. It staggered backward with a high-pitched whine, staring directly at the steaming paper cup in the hand of one of the interpreters. "Stop drinking that," it said in flawless English. Everyone froze. The interpreter, a young woman named Carla, blinked. "It's just coffee," she said. The Tharxan turned to the delegation leader, a pale man from Canada whose name Roger didn't remember. "That substance is toxic," the alien said. The Canadian blinked. "Pardon? Toxic," the Tharxan repeated. "It damages cellular equilibrium, destabilizes neurochemical regulation, and promotes adrenal fatigue. Why would you ingest it recreationally?" Carla looked down at her coffee, then slowly took another sip. Roger coughed. "If I may," he said, stepping forward, "we've been drinking coffee for centuries. Most of us start our day with it." The Tharxan looked at him. "And you have survived," Roger shrugged. "More or less." The alien's gaze darted to a nearby journalist who was sipping an espresso. Then to a security officer with a thermos. Then to Roger's own hand where a half-empty travel mug sat unnoticed. "You are all ingesting poison?" "Technically, yes," Roger said, "but socially it's called breakfast." That was the beginning of the first interstellar cultural incident. By the next day, the Tharxan delegation submitted a formal request to ban all caffeine consumption in proximity to their personnel. The UN tried to comply. Coffee machines were unplugged. Cafeteria signs warned of prohibited substances. But within hours, several staffers experienced withdrawal symptoms. A translator fainted during a session. One of the Australian aides reportedly vomited on a Tharxan's cloak. The alien left the room immediately and filed a complaint. Roger was summoned to the Situation Room not because he was important, but because no one else wanted to explain caffeine addiction to a species that had never encountered chemical dependency in liquid form. "Let me get this straight," said Draven, the Tharxan health envoy, peering at the cup Roger brought for demonstration. "You willingly consume a substance that elevates heart rate, disrupts sleep cycles, and threatens your neurological balance." "For what purpose?" Roger blew on the surface of the black liquid. "Because it helps us function." "I do not understand." "I didn't think you would," Roger said, taking a sip, "but you asked." Draven tilted its head. "Your species appears to be in a constant state of physiological stress. We call it Monday." Officially, caffeine was declared a Tier 3 hazard under Tharxan biological classifications, just beneath radioactive isotopes but above fermented dairy. A compromise was struck. Coffee could be consumed in green zones within human facilities, provided the air filtration systems were isolated. It didn't help. The Tharxans complained of headaches. One claimed to suffer visual distortions after standing near an espresso machine for too long. Another claimed that the smell of roast beans made her hallucinate. The Tharxan ambassador demanded a scientific study. Roger was assigned to lead it. He didn't have much choice. The funding came directly from the Interplanetary Research Council, and he was still technically unemployed after his university downsized. So he packed up his books, bought a new toothbrush, and moved into a mixed-species research facility in New Mexico. The center was called Harmony Station, though almost no one there was in harmony with anyone else. His lab partner was a Tharxan named Creel. Creel wore an environmental suit even inside the lab and refused to touch any object that had been in contact with coffee. Roger couldn't bring his mug inside, so he drank out of paper cups in the hallway. "Your people consume this in workplaces?" Creel asked during their first week, religiously. "And your productivity increases, we think so. You are not sure," Roger sighed. "We're never really sure of anything." He ran blood tests, neural scans, and hormone panels on volunteers. He tracked caffeine metabolism across different age groups. He even filmed a time-lapse of a man going through 3 days of withdrawal, which ended with the subject sobbing while hugging a coffee machine. Creel watched the footage in silence. "Your species has conditioned itself to dependence." Roger nodded. "We call that modern life." The study results were inconclusive. Caffeine was, by Tharxan standards, absurdly harmful, but for humans it was manageable. The average human liver processed caffeine in under 6 hours. Side effects were real but rarely dangerous unless consumed in massive quantities. Creel proposed a theory. Perhaps your species evolved with an unusually high tolerance for environmental toxins. You survived millennia by adapting to hostile substances. Roger looked around the lab. Or maybe we just never knew when to stop. Then came the incident in Brussels. A Tharxan diplomat collapsed during a trade summit after unknowingly ingesting a chocolate truffle laced with espresso. The room was evacuated. The diplomat was stabilized but traumatized. Within hours, Tharxan media denounced humanity's addiction to psychoactive sludge. Protests erupted on the Tharxan homeworld. Some called for a freeze on Earth relations. Roger was called to testify at the emergency tribunal. He didn't sleep the night before. He tried, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He stared at the ceiling of his hotel room, then relented. He made a pot of black coffee and drank half of it before dawn. The tribunal chamber looked like a cathedral built by mathematicians. Every surface gleamed. The Tharxan judges floated in grav chairs, staring with unblinking eyes. "You have come to defend your species' relationship with a toxic substance," one asked. Roger stood behind the podium, exhausted and jittery. "I'm not here to defend it," he said. "I'm here to explain it." He told them about long shifts in emergency rooms, where nurses relied on caffeine to stay alert. About soldiers in freezing outposts drinking it to stay awake through the night. About single parents working double shifts, programmers debugging systems at dawn, students cramming for exams. "Coffee doesn't make life easier," he said. "It just makes it possible." A pause. One judge leaned forward. "You are aware it is damaging," Roger nodded. "So is stress. So is poverty. So is grief. But we don't get to choose the world we inherit, we learn to live in it. Caffeine is a tool, sometimes a crutch, but it's ours." They deliberated for 6 hours. In the end, Earth was granted a unique cultural exemption. Caffeine, though toxic by Tharxan standards, would not be banned. Trade resumed. The Tharxans issued a public statement acknowledging the complexity of human neurochemical adaptation. Creel sent Roger a message later that night. "I do not understand your species," it read. "But I admire your persistence." Roger read it twice, laughed once, and refilled his coffee mug. His hand still shook, but less than before. Harmony Station slowly returned to routine. The airlock stopped buzzing with urgency. The research continued. Roger stayed on as a consultant, eventually earning a small office. He decorated it with empty cups from around the world: Istanbul, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Nairobi. One morning, Creel knocked on his door. "I have a question," the alien said. "Shoot. Do you believe your species will ever stop drinking it?" Roger looked at the cup on his desk, steam swirling like a ghost. "No," he said. "But we might learn to drink less." Creel stared at the mug. May I smell it? Roger hesitated, then held it out. Creel leaned forward, inhaled, and recoiled. It smells like burnt despair. Roger grinned. That's how you know it's working. Outside, the sun rose over the desert. Inside, the lab hummed with quiet activity. The walls bore no banners, no flags, no declarations of superiority. Just a sign above the break room that read, "Caffeine zone, enter with caution." Roger leaned back in his chair, took a sip, and got back to work. Creel was waiting outside the infirmary, arms tucked behind its back in a way that looked ceremonial but probably wasn't. Roger noticed the Tharxan's neck plates twitching in irregular pulses, something he'd learned meant agitation, not cold, though they had no word for either. "You summon me?" Roger held the door open with his foot. "I need you to look at something. And before you panic, there's no caffeine involved." Creel hesitated, then stepped inside. The room was quiet except for the rasp of filtered air through the purifier vents. A human technician sat slumped on a cot, blinking slowly with the vacant expression of someone who regretted every choice that had led to being awake. His name tag read Dawson. Roger gestured to the chart on the table. He was found in Lab 6. Nausea, tremors, elevated pulse, dilated pupils. He said he hadn't consumed anything out of the ordinary. Creel inspected Dawson from across the room, clearly unwilling to breathe the same air. "You believe this is another caffeine exposure?" "No, that's the problem. His blood work doesn't show any. But his cortisol is spiked. Dopamine levels are bouncing like a pinball machine, and his EEG looks like someone trying to play jazz with a car battery." Creel's eye membranes narrowed. "Then what is the cause?" Roger lifted a plastic container from under the table and placed it between them. Inside was a half-eaten protein bar wrapped in silver foil. He said he grabbed this from the vending machine, thought it was one of the new Tharxan-compatible ones. Creel stared. "That is not one of ours. No, it's a human formulation. But get this, it's infused with L-theanine, guarana extract, green tea concentrate, and yerba mate. Individually mild, together. A biochemical cocktail with more stimulants than a fighter pilot's breakfast." Creel didn't respond right away. Its mandibles clicked once. "You ingested this voluntarily." "I didn't, but he did. Thought it was herbal." Creel took a step back. "You engineered a food product that mimics the neurological effects of your banned beverage." Roger sat on the edge of the cot. "It wasn't intentional, it's just that humans like to feel alert. Even when we're not drinking coffee, we find other ways to get the same effect. This is not adaptation, it is compulsion." "Not wrong," Roger admitted, "but it's hard to explain. We're not addicted to the substance. We're addicted to the state it gives us: clarity, control. The illusion of being ahead of the chaos for 5 minutes." The Tharxan approached the protein bar, scanned the label with its wrist console, then turned to Roger. "Your people do not merely tolerate stress, you manufacture it into consumables." Roger nodded slowly. "Kind of our thing." They kept Dawson under observation for several hours. His vitals stabilized, but only after 2 Roman IV bags and an aggressively bland meal of white rice and steamed zucchini. He eventually sat upright, groggy but coherent. "I thought it was just a snack," he said hoarsely. "It was a landmine," Roger replied. "Next time, read the ingredients before you chew." By late evening, the incident had already reached the Tharxan Medical Council. Creel wasn't pleased. "They are demanding a dietary audit of all consumables in shared zones," it said, pacing outside Roger's lab. "Snacks, supplements, even the air hydration tablets in the gym," Roger sighed. "That's going to be a nightmare." Creel paused. "Why do you not simply eliminate all stimulant sources?" Roger leaned against the wall. "Because we'd stop functioning. You think it's about addiction, but you're missing the bigger picture. We created a lifestyle that demands more than our biology was designed to give, so we cheat." Creel tilted its head. "Then your species has outpaced its own evolutionary design." Roger shrugged. "Probably sometime around the invention of the spreadsheet." The following morning, Harmony Station's vending machines were sealed pending inspection. Temporary signs were posted outside the dining units, warning of stimulant surveillance protocols. A memo circulated advising staff to avoid anything labeled energizing, revitalizing, or with a kick. Roger found himself at the center of an awkward staff meeting in the conference sphere. The room was mostly aliens Tharxans, Valeri, a couple of sentient gas clusters whose presence was indicated only by the subtle warping of nearby air. The humans were badly outnumbered, and most had the same expression: caffeine-deprived skepticism. A Valeri delegate addressed the group. "We request clarification. Are all human dietary products engineered for psychological modification?" Roger cleared his throat. "Not all, just the ones we market well." The Valeri's skin shifted from blue to a cautious magenta. Another alien, a Tharxan with a deeper vocal register than Creel, leaned forward. "Is it accurate that your infants are exposed to sugar within their first year of life?" Roger hesitated. "Yes. For what purpose?" "Joy," Roger said, "and birthday cake." The room fell quiet. A Tharxan physician tapped the table. "We have reviewed over 427 human food items. More than half contain substances that alter brain chemistry. This is not sustenance. This is systemic modulation." Roger leaned forward. "That's what happens when you build entire economies around how people feel. You stop feeding hunger and start feeding emotions." The Valeri delegate clicked its translator. "So you are not addicted to any one compound. You are addicted to mood control." Roger didn't answer right away. "Then, we're addicted to performance. Mood's just a side effect." The meeting ended without resolution. The station director, a tired woman from Mumbai named Dr. Mehra, pulled Roger aside afterward. "You're making them nervous," she said. "I'm making them informed. There's a difference." Later that week, Roger received a request for an interview with a Tharxan documentary crew. He agreed, mostly out of curiosity. They set up in the observatory dome where the stars spilled across the glass like a spilled bag of diamonds. The lead interviewer, a Tharxan with a glimmering chest plate, began with a simple question. "What is the earliest memory you have of consuming a stimulant?" Roger blinked. "Probably when I was 8. My uncle gave me a sip of cola when I was sick. Said the bubbles would help settle my stomach. And did they? No, but I felt better anyway." "Why?" "Because it felt like someone was trying to help." The Tharxan paused. "You associate chemical alteration with emotional care." Roger nodded. "That's the real addiction, not the substance." The comfort. The interview lasted over an hour. They asked about workplace culture, sleep deprivation, the psychology of marketing, and the historical link between religious rituals and psychoactive substances. Roger answered everything honestly, even when it made no one look good. When he returned to the lab, Creel was waiting. "I watched the broadcast. Did I embarrass the species? You suggested that your people self-medicate with food because the world is too demanding." Roger dropped his coat over a chair. "That's the short version." Creel was silent for a moment. Then, "I have reviewed the metabolic data of your kind. Your capacity for homeostatic disruption is remarkable but unsustainable." Roger sat. "Tell me something I don't know." Creel approached the terminal. "What if the problem is not the stimulant but the need for it?" Roger looked up. "What are you suggesting?" "We cannot prevent you from consuming these substances, but perhaps we can help reduce the conditions that make them necessary." Roger raised an eyebrow. "You want to fix our stress?" "No. But we may be able to help you survive it with less damage." He didn't answer right away. Then, "You'd be the first species to try." Creel's neck plates fluttered. "We are not doing it for you. We simply prefer not to share facilities with beings in a constant state of biochemical emergency." Roger laughed, but not unkindly. The next day, a joint task group was formed to investigate non-chemical methods of human cognitive support. Meditation chambers were proposed. Light therapy pods. Even nap-friendly scheduling. Roger wasn't sure any of it would stick. But when he walked past the sealed vending machine later that evening, he didn't feel the usual pang of annoyance. Just curiosity. Maybe, he thought, they'd finally found something more surprising than coffee. Humans trying to slow down. The meditation dome smelled faintly of eucalyptus and disappointment. Roger sat cross-legged on one of the rubberized mats, eyes half-lidded, trying to obey the calm monotone of the relaxation instructor without instinctively cataloging the flaws in the setup. The lighting was too sterile. The soundscape of synthetic ocean waves looped every 23 seconds, and the mat beneath him creaked with every breath. Across from him, a Tharxan named Yeltrin hovered slightly above its mat, legs folded in a configuration that looked anatomically impossible for anyone with a spine. "I am not certain your breathing rhythm is intentional," Yeltrin said, not opening its eyes. "That's because I'm hyperventilating," Roger replied. "You were instructed to inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 8. I'm trying. My diaphragm's just not cooperating." Yeltrin's dorsal fronds twitched once. "Your autonomic functions appear unusually oppositional." "Welcome to the miracle of anxiety," Roger muttered. The instructor, a Valeri with iridescent skin and a voice like a wind chime trapped in a bottle, tapped a small bowl with a polished stick. The tone resonated throughout the dome. "Let your thoughts pass like clouds," she said. "Observe without judgment." Roger opened one eye. "One of my thoughts is that I want a cinnamon roll. Is that allowed?" The Valeri didn't respond, but the bowl rang again slightly louder. After 30 minutes, the session ended mercifully without injury. Participants filed out in orderly silence, most of the aliens gliding or floating or otherwise managing to appear deeply centered. Roger stood up slowly, back popping in protest, and tried not to groan. Yeltrin hovered beside him. "I am curious, how did you find the session?" "About as useful as a paper raincoat." "You did not achieve any measurable tranquility," Roger rubbed the back of his neck. "I achieved a cramp in my left foot, and the realization that my mind is louder than an air raid siren." Yeltrin's eye clusters rotated slightly. "This outcome is consistent with the reports." Human participants exhibit reduced stress markers only when the sessions are followed by complex tasks. Roger blinked. "Wait, you're saying we relax by doing things?" "Correct. Stillness appears to provoke discomfort. Activity reduces internal dissonance." "That actually tracks," Roger said. "We don't meditate to escape stress. We work through it, build something, solve a problem. It gives us the illusion of progress." Yeltrin floated a little higher. "Then perhaps your species requires structured challenges rather than passive stillness." Roger squinted. "Are you suggesting stress management by doing more, not less? Only if the task is framed as purpose-driven and time-limited." Roger chuckled. "So, give us a problem and a deadline." "Congratulations, you've invented the group project." 2 days later, Harmony Station's administration launched a pilot program, structured cognitive engagement modules. Each participant, human and alien, was assigned a task unrelated to their normal duties, with a clear goal and a 3-hour limit. Roger was placed on a mixed-species team tasked with assembling an emergency shelter using only repurposed lab equipment, a half-empty toolbox, and a crate of mislabeled shipping foam. His teammates included a Tharxan logistics advisor named Vrool and a gelatinous diplomat from the gas cluster species who communicated through shifting color pulses projected onto a floating disk. Roger named it Huey because it never objected. "This wrench is bent," Roger said, holding up the offending tool. Vrool examined it. "It is not bent. It is simply adapted to improper use." "I know a few people like that," Roger muttered, then wedged a pipe clamp under the makeshift support beam. "Huey, can you stabilize this end with the polymer foam?" Huey blinked green, then flashed orange, twice a signal Roger had learned meant something between yes and already done. 3 hours in, the shelter stood lopsided but functional. The roof was a composite of lab trays woven with fiber optic cables. The walls were reinforced crate panels. The door was 2 biohazard signs taped together with medical gauze. It was beautiful in the way an exhausted child's drawing of a house is beautiful, unapologetically earnest. "Why does this reduce your stress?" Vrool asked, circling the structure. "Because it gives us control," Roger said. "It's messy, chaotic control, but it's ours. We made something out of nothing." Huey pulsed violet, then projected a small symbol onto the ground. Roger didn't recognize it. Vrool did. "It means creation from disorder. It is their highest compliment," Roger smiled. "Well then, I'll take it." That evening, biometric scans showed human participants had lower cortisol levels than after meditation or sleep therapy. Roger's blood pressure dropped 10 points. One technician's chronic headaches disappeared for 24 hours. The results were compiled and presented to the Tharxan Health Council. Creel reviewed the data without comment for several minutes. "This confirms our hypothesis," it finally said. "Your species does not eliminate stress. It metabolizes it. We're like emotional compost bins," Roger said. "Throw in enough pressure and something useful comes out." Creel's eye slits narrowed. "That is both disturbing and efficient." A week later, the vending machines were reinstated under heavy regulation. Caffeine-free zones remained in place, but green lights now blinked above certain selections, indicating items cleared for mixed-species consumption. Roger noted with some satisfaction that the cinnamon rolls were given a yellow light. Caution advised. The protein bars were reformulated under Creel's supervision. The stimulant compounds were replaced with slow-release carbohydrates and trace minerals. "They taste like drywall now," Roger said, chewing one experimentally. "They will not induce hallucinations," Creel replied. "That is an improvement." Yeltrin entered the lab mid-afternoon, carrying a data slate. "We have received approval for the next phase of integration," it announced. "The Tharxan Cultural Health Directorate has authorized joint resilience workshops." Roger raised an eyebrow. "We're teaching each other how to cope," precisely. "Our methods emphasize internal regulation. Yours emphasize external adaptation. Together, they may produce hybrid strategies." Roger leaned back in his chair. "You know, I never thought I'd be part of a cross-species therapy group." "Your people require it," Yeltrin said. "Your stress tolerance is admirable but unsustainable." Roger nodded. "We've been surviving on fumes and stubbornness for centuries. Maybe it's time we learned a better way." By the end of the month, Harmony Station hosted its first interadaptive wellness exchange. Humans demonstrated stress relief through improvisational problem-solving, creative expression, and physical motion. One group even choreographed a group dance involving broom handles and caution tape. The aliens offered breathing techniques, tactile resonance therapy, and something called mind flowering, which apparently involved staring at crystals until one's thoughts dissolved. No one fully understood each other's methods, but participants reported a measurable sense of camaraderie. Roger stood near the observatory dome after the final session, sipping from a thermos of chamomile tea. Creel joined him, holding nothing. "You didn't bring a beverage," Roger noted. "I have no need. I have achieved equilibrium." Roger sipped. "Must be nice." Creel watched the stars. "Your species will never eliminate stress entirely. We wouldn't know what to do without it. But you may learn to carry it differently." Roger nodded. "We're getting there." The stars shimmered coldly above the dome, indifferent and infinite. But inside, amid the quiet hum of shared breath and mismatched understanding, something rare had taken root, not peace exactly, but balance.